One of my favorite things of fall is a college football Saturday. One of my favorite things about a college football Saturday is seeing the Buckeyes on the field. And the Buckeyes are set to return to the field after an off week as they face the Iowa Hawkeyes this Saturday. What should the Buckeyes' mindset be as they return to the field and prepare for the second half of the season? We'll discuss that today on Locked on Buckeyes.
You are Locked on Buckeyes, your daily podcast on the Ohio State Buckeyes. Part of the Locked on Podcast Network, your team every day.
What is up, Buckeye fans? Welcome back to another episode of Locked on Buckeyes for the Locked on Podcast Network. I'm your host, Jay Stevens, also the host of the Jay Stevens Podcast. It is Monday, August 17th in the year 2022, and I want to thank you for making Locked on Buckeyes your first listen or first watch of every single day. On today's episode, we will begin a two-part series discussing questions that I have going into the second half of the season. Today's questions are all about the Ohio State offense. But before we get to any of that, your Ohio State Buckeyes had an off week or a bye week or whatever you want to call it, and that time period is over. They are back in full swing, getting ready to play the Iowa Hawkeyes on Big Noon. There's a big noon game this weekend the Buckeyes will play in. Also, the following week against Penn State, there will be a big noon game as well. Both games will be on Fox. The Buckeyes are preparing for the Hawkeyes. Should be a blowout. The Buckeyes are also going to be prepared for the Penn State Nittany Lions the week after. And in this time period, we saw Alabama get upset a week ago against Tennessee, hitting a game-winning walk-off field goal. Also in the same day, later in the day, we saw Utah beat USC as Cam rose to the occasion. It was a phenomenal thing to see him score that two-point conversion as Cam Rising rose to the occasion and did what was needed for the Utah Utes to beat the USC Trojans. But in this time period, learned something about those two teams and about how the AP voters are viewing those teams right now. And it also gives us a little insight on how the Buckeyes should view and what their mindset should be going into the second half of the season. To me, it's very simple. It might be to you as well. Take care of business. That's it. If the Buckeyes take care of business, they're in. Now, I want to couple this with and I group this with the AP poll, and I do believe we can learn a lot from the AP poll as far as how the voters are doing things right now. The AP poll voters have a great deal of influence, that is, on those that are voting in the College Football Playoff Committee. It's a weird little setup we have going on in college football that people and media members and those that are presidents and ADs and chancellors and former players and coaches are deciding such a thing like who's going to be in a 14 playoff, but that's what we have right now. No media members on the committee, but still, they are influencing those that are a part of said committee. The AP poll recently came out on Sunday, shortly before recording this year's episode. Ohio State moved up to number 2. They remained at number 2 in the AP poll. They moved up to number 2 in the coaches poll. Remember, as long as the Buckeyes keep taking care of business, they're going to keep moving on up. Georgia's number 1. Tennessee moved up 3 spots to the number 3 spot after upsetting the Alabama Crimson Tide. Michigan moved up to 1 spot to number 4 after just destroying and running all over the Penn State Nittany Lions. Clemson dropped 1 spot to 5. Alabama dropped 3 spots to 6. Ole Miss is number 7. TCU is number 8. UCLA is 9. Oregon is 10. There are not many Big Ten teams inside the AP top 25. There are only 4 of them. 3 from the Big Ten East: Ohio State, Michigan, Penn State. The lone team from the West, Illinois. The other teams in the Big Ten receiving votes, Purdue and Minnesota. The Big Ten is not that good of a conference outside of the Big Ten East. It's really, really odd to see the football that's being played. Minnesota's good. Illinois is good. Purdue is Illinois is but still, it's the Big Ten East, and we all know that. But the Buckeyes simply have to take care of business. Now, granted, you may say, Jay, who are the tougher opponents coming up on the second half of the season? Let me just tell you very quickly, it's Penn State And there's Michigan. The game against Iowa this coming weekend should be a blowout. The game November 5th against Northwestern should be a blowout. It's on the road, doesn't matter, should still be a blowout. The following week against Indiana, the Hoosiers come to the shoe. The Hoosiers should get blown out of the doors and get sent back to Bloomington, Indiana with a beat down. They do go on the road to Maryland on the 19th. That might be a little bit of a trickier game because Maryland can do some things on the offensive side of the ball. Talea can do some amazing things with the football. And then that team up north, the final week of the regular season. Really two tough games. I'd be very interesting to see how the Buckeyes play on the road against Maryland. The time of that kickoff will be interesting to see how the Buckeyes start that game off. But really the mindset is easy. As the Buckeyes move on up in the polls, even though they are not playing right now, as they did move up in the coaches poll, it's simple. Take care of business. That's it. Stroud is one person that we all view and look at and say, hey, if Stroud is on point, if CJ does his thing, the Buckeyes will be fine. If the O-line does their thing, the Buckeyes will be fine. If the offensive passing attack is great, the Buckeyes will be fine. But if you put all those things together, there's one piece of the pie on offense that is left out. The running game. Talk more about the running game later on in my questions for the Ohio State offense going into the second half of the season. But the running backs, Mayan Williams, Trevion Henderson, we have seen when one of them is a featured back, the Buckeyes are just fine. Defensively, take care of business. This Buckeye defense under Jim Knowles, talk about it at the end of last week, or to talk about it again this week as well. Special, man. These guys can do some special things, but you got to take care of business. If you take care of business, things are going to be easy for the Buckeyes to get things done. And you know what? I believe they can. I know before the season started, I said what game might trip up. Don't know where the trick came in. Might trip up the Buckeyes. It's Penn State on the road, Halloween weekend. A stripe out for the fans. But also, you know what else might happen? The Buckeyes, as we saw the Wolverines run for over 400 yards. Yes, 400-plus rushing yards the Wolverines had on Saturday against Penn State. Donovan Edwards and Blake Corum are good running backs. I still think that if you put Henderson and Williams in the backfield and you rely on those running backs to get some things done, they can have a field day against Penn State as well. The mindset is simple. As the Buckeyes continue to move on up in the polls, that's going to influence the playoff committee and how they put their polls together. But ultimately, the mindset the second half of the season, take care of business, and you will ultimately accomplish every goal you set prior to the season, the same goals they have in every year. Beat the team up north, win the Big Ten championship game, win the Natty. Take care of business, you'll accomplish every goal. Accomplishing goals is great. But as the Buckeyes continue and strive to accomplish their goals that have been set prior to the season, as they go into the second half of the season with those goals still in reach, I have some questions about the Ohio State offense, what we'll see from them in the second half of the season. What are those questions? There are three of them. I'll let you know what they are and discuss them next right here on Locked on Buckeyes. The numbers don't lie. In the last decade, over 4 million people have chosen Simply Safe Home Security to protect their home. You don't earn the trust of that many people without doing something right. At Simply Safe, your safety is the only thing that matters. I know because I use Simply Safe in my home. They protect you with cutting-edge security technology powered by 24/7 professional monitoring agents who always have your back. Here's why I love it. With 24/7 professional monitoring, Simply Safe's agents call you the moment a threat is detected and dispatch police or first responders in an emergency. Simply Safe blankets your home in protection with advanced sensors for every room, window, and door. HD security cameras for inside and outside your home. Smarter ways to detect motion that only alert you when a threat is real. Our monitoring experts use proprietary advanced response technology to visually confirm when a break-in is real, so you can get the highest priority police dispatch. Customize a perfect system for your home in just a few minutes at simplysafe.com/lockedoncollege. Save 20% on your Simply Safe security system when you sign up for an interactive monitoring plan and get your first month free. Visit simplysafe.com/lockedoncollege to learn more. There's no safe like Simply Safe. Thank you for tuning in to Locked on Buckeyes and making it your first listen of the day. Make sure you subscribe to Locked on Buckeyes on the YouTube and on the Odyssey app, Apple Podcast app, Google, Spotify app, Google Podcast app, or wherever you get your fine podcast. Subscribe there. As you subscribe in those places, leave a 5-star review and a rating on the Apple Podcast app. On Spotify, rate and review there as well. On the YouTube, hit that subscribe button. We have a goal to reach 2,000 subscriptions. We'll get there with your help. Hit that bell to stay notified every time a new video goes live as well. So as the Buckeyes prepare for the second half of the season, there's a thought in my mind. It's a thought that's been there for quite a while. You might know what it is, and I probably can tell you what it is without even giving you very much thought. If you have listened to the podcast, you know that Jay is wondering what's going on with Jackson Smith-Njigba. And so as I think about JSN and his hamstring injury and him being inactive for quite a few games now, being on the availability report or status report, whatever you want to call it, being listed as not available in that game, I am wondering, what will the offense look like when Jackson Smith-Njigba returns to the field? That's my main question I've had going into every game, but now it's more bigger picture. What will the offense look like when he returns to the field? And I keep talking about primarily the passing attack when I bring up JSN and the offense and things like that. But as it stands right now, and I'm pulling up the stats here very quickly to get a more inside look at just basically some blanket season numbers, totals for a few players to simply see what will happen when he returns. As it stands right now, the leader in receptions for the Buckeyes is Emeka Egbuka with 35. The leader in receiving yards for the Buckeyes, Emeka Egbuka with 655 with 6 touchdowns. Second in both of those categories, the first two categories, is Marvin Harrison Jr. He has 31 catches, 536 receiving yards. He has 9 receiving touchdowns, leading the Buckeyes in that category. Julian Fleming is third in receiving touchdowns with 5. He also has 15 catches and 222 receiving yards. So those are your top 3 numbers receivers for Ohio State. And Njigba only has 4 catches played in 2 games, 36 receiving yards, 0 touchdowns. He also has not touched the ball at all. It has no carries. That is something that might happen later on in the season. But with those numbers right there, the Buckeyes offense has been wild and successful this season with those 3 guys there. And so my main thing is, what will the offense look like? And I keep talking about passing game, but as you look at those numbers, the passing numbers are fine. You're probably going to have 2 receivers over 1,000 yards, maybe 2 guys over 1,200 yards at the end of the season. You might have 2 guys that have between 12 to 15 receiving touchdowns at the end of the regular season. So you see what I'm saying? Like, the numbers are going to be just fine. But if Njigba comes back, how does that affect Fleming's play on the field, and how does that affect the touches that go to him? How does that affect Mine Williams and Njigba getting into the flow of things? How does that affect everything? So we keep talking about JSN, myself included, JSN with the passing game. But if he comes back second half of the season, let's say it's against Iowa, well, buddy, that's a different. I understand you might want to say, Jay, the offense is going to be similar, but Stroud might want to get his buddy the ball more. Day might want to get the number 1 receiver from a year ago the ball more. Might want to force feed him. And so I'm really curious. That's a big question, I'm sure, of mine. It is of mine. It's the first one on purpose. Also, maybe a big question of yours. What will the offense look like when Njigba returns to the field? Also, another question I have is very specific about 2 guys. And I made a statement, I think a couple weeks ago, maybe 3 weeks ago now, and regarding saying, hey, this position should change a starter. It's a position that only has 1 starter. There are multiple starters at receiver. Only one starter at quarterback, one starter at each position on the O-line, one starting tight end, one starting running back. So you're kind of getting a picture about where's Jay going with this. But if you remember the episode, I made a statement in the title. Why Mayan Williams should be the starting running back at Ohio State. I did not anticipate that same week that he would be the featured running back and have a career day. I didn't know the following game Henderson would come in and be the featured back, have over 100 rushing yards, have a touchdown, get banged up, and be taken out of the game due to precaution. I didn't know all that was going to happen. But my question is not about who should start. It's what will the running back rotation look like throughout the final 6 games of the regular season. And I say that because I had to change things up just a tad, tweak them just a little bit. Because as we know in back-to-back games, that you have had 2 guys be your featured back. One of them missed a game. It came back. It was played well, showed improvement. Week before, he had a guy have a career day, tied a record at Ohio State with the most single-game rushing touchdowns with 5, tying a record that Keith Byers is a part of. Hey, I didn't know all those storylines would be thrown into the mix here this year. But the running back rotation will be key. Will you ride the hot hand? There will be games Mike Williams is hot or Travion Henderson is hot. Those are realities of football. But I don't know what the rotation will look like at that point in time right now. I got to wait and see what happens against Iowa, specifically against Penn State. Because I didn't realize Penn State's rushing defense was going to be so poor against the Wolverines of the team up north. I had no idea. And so with that being in mind, I'm sure these running backs are chomping at the bit and saying, we want the Nittany Lions. We understand we got to go on the road to Happy Valley. We understand it's a hostile environment, big noon kickoff, big noon Saturday. Gus Johnson, Joel Klatt will be on the call. The Buckeyes, not just game against Penn State, but the next 2 games. Oh, yeah, big noon will be there in the shoe on Saturday when the Hawkeyes come to town. Hey, I'm here for it. I am absolutely here for it. Some of you love Jenny Taft. She'll be in the stadiums as well. I wonder what that running back rotation will look like. Because if you change that up and tweak it improperly and it's not proper and it messes things up on the offense, imagine a bad running back rotation. You can't run the ball, and then Jigba comes back and they try to force feed him. Buddy, these are wrinkles that nobody expects. But, hey, these are the reality. It's possible. These are just questions. I have 2 of them going into the upcoming or the rest of the Buckeye season. I got one more question for you. A lot of times to talk about what position, one guy. Who is it? What position is it? We'll discuss all that next right here on Locked on Buckeyes. BetOnline.net is your number 1 source for football betting info this season. Find all of the latest player developments, team matchups, news, podcasts, and in-depth articles and analysis on every game you can find. And as always, BetOnline remains your continued source for all your sport wagering information with live betting and up-to-the-minute scores for every sport out there. The fastest and easiest way to check in on all your favorite games and events, including MLB, MMA, boxing, and golf. Head to betonline.net or use your mobile device to learn more about the trends and action. BetOnline, where the game starts. Locked on Buckeyes, along with all our other Cleveland podcasts, are now available on Roku and Amazon Fire TV as part of Locked On Sports Cleveland. More great local sports coverage 24/7, and it's free. Download the Locked On Sports Cleveland app today on Roku and Amazon Fire TV. One more question. The first question was about the offense specifically. The second question was about the running back rotation. This one is about the Ohio State Buckeyes tight end, Cade Stover. And I wonder what his role will be like in the second half of the season. Now, you might say, Jay, it's going to be the same. If you just want to double his totals throughout the rest of the year, okay, I can do some simple math in my head. I have no computer right here in front. No, I'm not using a computer, just math. Cade Stover has 16 receptions on the year. So you're saying at the end of the 6 games of the regular season, he's going to have 32 receptions. I can see that realistically happening. So he has 206 receiving yards right now. That is 412. I can see that happening, and he has 2 touchdowns right now. He could end the season with 4 receiving touchdowns regular season at the end of the regular season. I can see that happening as well. But if I think I know what might happen against certain opponents, I can easily say Cade Stover might have 35 receptions, 450, between 450 and 500 receiving yards, and 6 to 7 receiving touchdowns. I can see that realistically happening as well. There's also a backside to that. That is why Cade Stover is here. If JSN comes back and he's healthy, not just comes back on a pitch count, but he's healthy, does that derail what Stover has done in the passing game? And does he have a smaller piece of the pie in the passing game? I hope not. Because I think Cade Stover, along with other guys that are on the Buckeye team, has worked his way into being a future NFL draft pick. I don't know exactly if that's going to happen, but I do think Cade Stover has shown a lot of promise. And I do believe Cade Stover is a player that people can say, NFL teams, that they watch him play football this year with his running ability and his passing ability and all the things Cade Stover can do on the football field. I believe that Cade Stover, who I do believe has one more year of eligibility left, I believe with the COVID year in 2020, I do believe that Cade Stover has an extra year of eligibility, redshirted 19. I believe he got a redshirt 19, 2020 doesn't matter. So I do believe he has at least 1-2 more years of eligibility left for him to play the football. So with all that being in mind, I do think Cade Stover, if he does not come out this year and he comes out next year, I mean, this is him. This is who he is. A phenomenal run blocking tight end and a tight end who can do some things in the passing game. I think he's working his way into being a future NFL draft pick, which is amazing because if you asked me a year ago if Cade Stover would have been an NFL draft pick, a future NFL draft pick, I would have said, no. No. But then again, I think about the year he's having now. He's a better tight end at Ohio State than Luke Farrell. And Luke Farrell, I saw play today for the Jacksonville Jaguars as the Jaguars lost to the Colts. I saw that with my own 2 eyes. And he's a better tight end at Ohio State than Luke Farrell ever was. Jeff Hireman, when I pick Cade Stover or Hireman, probably Cade Stover. I mean, Stover is a dog, man. Stover can do some things. He could break some Buckeye season total records for a tight end in 2022. I literally mean that. I think, Ben Hartsock. I think Ben Hartsock holds the record for most receptions by a tight end in a regular season with 33, 34 maybe, 35 at the max. It's not that many. Ben Hartsock with Craig Krenzel as a quarterback, and you remember how that offense was in the early 2000s. Cade Stover is a phenomenal tight end, and he's probably going to do that with a better quarterback this year. But what will his play look like? What will his role look like later in the year? Said it before, I'll say it again. That's TBD to be determined. And I like it because it makes watching the games more intriguing. It makes what Cade Stover does on the field more fun. TBD, to be determined. Not mad about it. What's it going to do? Consistently allow me and force me to watch more intently what the Buckeyes offense does so that in our postcast after games, at the conclusion of the game, there'll be a postcast live on the Buckeyes, Locked on Buckeyes YouTube page. Go there, subscribe, hit the bell. You'll get alerted when that show goes live. Hey, it gives me one more thing to talk about, immediately reacting to what we just watched. 3 questions. What will the offense look like when Njigba returns to the field? What will the running back rotation look like in the second half of the season? And will Cade Stover be a bigger piece of the pie in the second half of the regular season? Really, will he be a bigger piece of the pie, or what will his role be in the second half of the season? Keep in mind, if JSN comes back, that's less balls being thrown his way. All of those things are TBD, to be determined. We will figure those things out, not against Iowa, but over the next few weeks as the Buckeyes get back on the field this week against the Hawkeyes of Iowa. Guys, Thank you for tuning in to Locked on Buckeyes here on a Monday. You can follow me on Twitter at jstevens07. You can send all of your emails to jstevens317 at gmail.com. Thank you for checking out Locked on Buckeyes. And also, make sure you check out the Locked on Big Ten podcast. Know your team, know what your team is up against across the Big Ten with Locked on Big Ten. Every day, host Nate Dickinson and the local experts of Locked On take you across the Big Ten in 30 minutes. Make Locked On Big Ten your second listen of the day. Make Locked On Buckeyes your first listen of the day. The Locked On Podcast Network has everything you want to know to stay up to date with what's going on with your favorite teams. The Browns, you want to know what's going on with the Browns? Go to Locked On Browns. If you want to stay up to date with what's going on with the Guardians and the playoffs, at the time of this recording, the Guardians and Yankees have not played on Sunday just yet. Go to Locked On Guardians. If you want to stay up to date with what's coming up with the Cavs in their upcoming NBA season, go to Locked On Cavs. Locked On Podcast Network has something for you with your favorite team every single day. Locked On Podcast Network has you covered. Locked On Buckeyes has you covered. We're out of here on this Monday. We'll be back tomorrow. I'll share 3 questions I have for the Buckeyes defense going into the second half of the season on tomorrow's show. In the meantime, we're out of here. Go Bucks, and have a great day.